Foreign Secretary there. Now, the Prime Minister says he thinks that companies should be forced to publish the wages earned by their male and female staff. Mr Cameron believes it will help abolish unequal pay in the workforce, but some argue there is no problem to solve. Here to discuss this are comedian Kate Smurthwaite and Kate Andrews from the Adam Smith Institute. So very good to talk to you both, and I better be careful which Kate I'm addressing. So, Kate Andrews, you're the one that doesn't really think there's much of an issue here to address.
No, I don't think there is necessarily. Look, I do think that women are still making some decisions when it comes to their careers and their workplace based on gender stereotypes, but that's something that we need to deal with in the private sphere. Employers are incredibly friendly towards women. Women between the ages of 22 and 39 in the UK now are earning on average more than their male counterparts, and when you take into account background and education and lifestyle decisions, the gender wage gap basically disappears. This effort to make businesses publish the pay gaps is really just going to leading statistics out in the public that are going to be manipulated.
OK, well, I want to pick out that statistic. Do you go along with it, Kate Smurthwaite, that 22 to 39-year-old women are doing, on average, better than their male counterparts, so no issue?
Well, that's brilliant, isn't it? We break it down by every single age bracket, every single region, every single this, and we find a one number where the women's pay is just a tiny fraction above the men's pay, and we go, well, that's it. Problem over, and we fail to look at the fact that people, for example, part-time workers, the pay gap is absolutely huge in this country, and other parts of the age spectrum, again, there continues to be a problem. And, you know, I don't think that what's being suggested... Now, first of all, I should say that this... I'm not saying, you know, David Cameron is a wonderful person who's sorted out women's inequality in the workplace. There are lots of things this government have done that have been very, very damaging to women's pay and women's opportunities in the workplace. But this step, I think, is a positive one. He's only saying that companies with over 250 employees need to publish these statistics. If you are a company with more than 250 members of staff, I don't think it's asking too much to say what are they paid and what is the gender of those staff. It's not, I mean, that data must be there on a spreadsheet for you to share with us. And companies are absolutely welcome to publish some notes with it and say, look, you know, there's a reason for this particular statistic. If there's other things going on, nothing is stopping them putting in an explanatory note, as they would with their accounts, explaining why they think that happens or what measures they're taking to address it. But what would be wonderful about these statistics is that it would give people a bit of choice to say, let's have a look at different companies, let's see who seems to be doing well, and let's see where there are problems, and let's start to challenge those problems. If there's a lack of skills, if there's a lack of opportunities, and if there's a lack of enthusiasm for women getting into a certain area, we can address it. But without seeing the numbers, it's very difficult to address it. So I think more information is more, and, you know, the more we know about it, the more positive steps we can take to make sure that women are getting all the opportunities that they deserve fully to the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, Kate Andrews, that's an unarguable point, isn't it? Maybe you will try and argue it, but if your statistic holds up, the 22 to 39-year-olds, and I suppose there must be an awful lot of women between those ages in the workplace, if they are getting paid more, then why aren't the companies publishing it and being proud?
Because the companies know that when you publish numbers like that on a spreadsheet, it's not telling the full story. You can't possibly expect for a huge company to publish one number, the man's number, next to the female number, and say, well, this is a good indication of whether or not we have a gender stereotype. You're comparing different kinds of careers. You're comparing people with different education, different backgrounds, people who have taken time out of work for travel and for family care for many different reasons. You're not actually addressing the real issue. My biggest frustration today is that we do have issues in our society. Women aren't being treated fairly all the time. There is a lot of sexism that still exists out there, but employers are not the ones implementing it. Employers are paying women more on average. If women do the same jobs that men do, they are more likely to be aggressively promoted, and they're more likely to earn more over the course of their lives. The real problem is when women take time out of the workplace because they need to go towards childcare. And these are the issues that we should be addressing, but employers have very little to do with that. That comes down to the family life and to men stepping up to the plate and saying, you know what, I need to take some responsibility too. Perhaps my wife should be staying at her job because she's earning more than me and she's more successful. But we're not having those conversations, and when the Prime Minister tries to implement policy like this, he just creates more bogus statistics that aren't addressing the real issues that are still hurting women.
Okay, just let me stay with you, Kate Andrews, and personalise this. Are you sure? Do you know how much your male counterparts are being paid, and would you be a little miffed if you thought you're working as hard at the Adam Smith Institute as a male counterpart and he's getting more?
I do have a sneaking suspicion I know what my male counterparts make, and I know that I was the last person to join the Institute. I know what my figure is, I know what their figure is. I'm not saying whether or not it's higher or lower. I'm saying that if I were to be compared to my colleague Sam or my colleague Ben because they were men and I was a woman, well, I think that's already comparison. That's already stereotyping people. These kinds of policies are exactly the sorts of things that stereotype people when we want to move away from that.
Yeah, I can't really apply that to the world of comedy, Kate Smurthwaite, in that you're not really employed. But, you know, there are a lot of, let's say, a lot of big male, lot of big and very famous male comedians who get millions of pounds a year. I'm not sure if you're getting that, but it's about how do you compare like with like.
Well, absolutely. And what Cameron is proposing certainly wouldn't apply to somebody like myself who is self-employed. Although I would love to see people looking at ways to address those statistics as well. And I'm absolutely certain that there is a discrepancy. To suggest that the discrepancy comes down exclusively to choices about taking time off to have children and so on. I mean, if that was the case, first of all, we would see that women without children were not affected by the pay gap. And we don't actually see that. We see that women are still being held back. So there is definitely still a problem. But also, companies can publish the breakdown of the data. They can say this is what happens, these are where the numbers lie. And actually I would also question the notion that the pay gap comes down to about people taking time off work. I think often the reverse is true, that women feel their careers aren't going anywhere and they go, well, if one of us has to take time off, I guess it might as well be me, since I feel like I'm not going to get promoted, like I'm not being taken as seriously. The fact is that overall there is a huge gap, a huge differential, and it's really not closing. And yes, of course, some of that is down to things that happen in the private sphere, some of that is down to things that happen in the public sector, some of that is down to different things about families and the way that people choose to run their lives. But we have to see that some of that is down to corporations and the way they behave and the way that people are treated and respected. And let's just publish the numbers. As I've said already, more information is more information. As soon as we see these numbers, this is great. We can start to look at the areas where we can do better and we can start to work on it. It's not a huge ask. It's a very straightforward statistic. It gives us a quick read and then we can go and dig into the number more. And yeah, more information is better and it gives people the choice. Who am I going to work for? Let's see how to make this a genuinely equal culture in which we're working.
OK, well, it's never simple, is it? Listen, thank you both. Really interesting stuff. Got us all thinking there. Kate Smurthwaite and Kate Andrews. As I say, thank you both. Now, a new secure zone is being created at Calais for lorries heading for the UK. The move was announced a short while ago by the Home Secretary Theresa May in the House of Commons after she says more than 8,000 attempts by illegal migrants were made to try to cross the Channel. George Osborne has warned Eurozone leaders that British money mustn't be used to prop up any Greek deal. It's after concerns that hundreds of millions of pounds of British taxpayers' money could be put on the line for Greece's latest emergency bailouts. Arriving in Brussels this morning, the Chancellor said that using the EU budget to secure loans to Athens would be a non-starter.
Let me be very clear, Britain is not in the euro, so the idea that British taxpayers are going to be on the line for this Greek deal is a complete non-starter. The Eurozone needs to foot its own bill.
Chancellor there in Brussels. Now, NASA's fastest ever spacecraft has been as close to the dwarf planet Pluto as it possibly can get. These are the latest images. There you go. That was transmitted overnight by the craft. It's called New Horizons, just before communication was suspended, presumably as it went around the back of the dwarf planet. Previous pictures of the planet have been very blurry, but scientists believe the latest images will give them more information about what conditions are like on Pluto. Some reaction from some of the people working at NASA's Mission Control in Laurel in Maryland at the time it was due to make its pass by.